Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I've got a fantastic guest for you today. His name is Jamie Lima, and he is the founder and president of Woodson Wealth Management. He's also the founder of Allegiant Divorce Solutions. So this is the first time I've had a guest come on to the podcast, talk about the implications of divorce. We're going to talk about the ins and outs, navigating through divorce, protecting yourself from a financial standpoint. And I'm really happy to have Jamie on the show. So, Jamie, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I know we connected and we were talking backstage and kind of talk about because divorce is a taboo subject and these things like prenups are taboo. So kind of talk about your early journey and how you leverage that experience to helping others.
Great question. Yeah, I mean, I think for my personal journey, there's a professional journey and there's a personal journey where I'll start with the personal side just because that's really what prompted me to get into this line of work to begin with. But I grew up in a divorced family. My parents were divorced there when I was roughly 7 or 8 years old. I recognized early on that they were struggling to make ends meet, and it was very, very challenging for them, both from a financial perspective and probably from an emotional perspective as well. My dad was working multiple jobs to try to keep a roof over two homes, and care for my daughter, my sister, and his daughter. And my mother worked multiple jobs and just a lot of side jobs, just trying to keep us afloat. And there was a moment in time when I was very young, probably around the same age, again 7 or 8 years old. And one of my best friends growing up, he and his mother, I still remember to this day, they brought us over a box of groceries in order for us to put food in our pantry. And I learned in that moment, even though I was still very young, that things were tough. It was very impactful to me even at that young age. And I remember telling myself that if I ever had kids one day, I never wanted them to have the same experience and the same stress in their life that I did at that stage. And then fast forward a few years, and now here I am. I got myself into the financial services world mainly because of that experience. Because I feel like growing up, like if or even in our adult lives, if there's something that we don't have a lot of, sometimes we tend to gravitate towards it. In my life, it was money, and so I learned early on about the financial services world and investing and business and things of that nature, and that's what prompted me to get into the world of finance, where I've been a financial planner for almost 20 years now, mainly stemming from those early experiences. And in 2017, I went through a pretty challenging and financially and also emotionally challenging divorce myself, and I started learning more about the divorce financial planning aspect of things, and now I've become a certified divorce financial analyst and launched my own financial planning company relative to divorce, and just trying to help people navigate some of the decisions that they have to make and prepare for and navigate divorce financially. But it's really, really stemming from those something that happened to me at 7 or 8 years old really propelled me into this line of work 40 years later.
Your personal experiences growing up, kind of influence your choices. And I know that's kind of a generalized statement, but it's like, for example, millennials and we grew up, right during the great financial crisis, and we learned to never trust, governments and, never trust corporations. Nixon, when he was impeached, people learned not to trust the government. So it's kind of very interesting in how you've turned that, how you focus on, that aspect, finances, because, that's kind of like the currency that allows us to do things in today's world. Because if you don't have that, you're SOL. So one thing I ask is, I've seen the younger generation having less kids, not getting married, starting their own businesses, kind of not really relying on, they know that Social Security is not going to be there or the government's not going to be there, jobs aren't going to be there. So this idea of getting married, and I've always been curious because why do people get married? Because, you mentioned the divorce rate is 50%. 9 out of 10 of my colleagues have been divorced, and it's just it's devastating. Over half everything they work for, half of it goes to all of this, and it's kind of like, why your 90% chance of failure, you lose half your assets, and it's kind of like we're sold this storybook, you got to pay for this $1 million wedding, beautiful. So kind of
Mhm.
talk about, the implications of divorce, like these changing trends.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. We could probably do a whole podcast on the experiences that millennials have had with investing and who to trust and who not to trust. I mean, we could certainly do a second podcast just on that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, growing up, the very first experience a lot of millennials had with investing, it was they put money into a brokerage account, they buy some investments, and then 2008, 2009 happens, and it wipes them out, and they're like, "Forget this. I'm going to go off and do something else because this is a fool's game," and that's the challenge that we as financial advisors have always had is there's kind of a negative connotation if you go to a party. You want to talk to the doctor, the attorney, the business owner, and so on. As soon as somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I'm a financial advisor," everybody scatters, right? Nobody wants to talk to the financial advisor because they think we're all a bunch of scumbags, and that's not necessarily how it is, right? I mean, a lot of us have been doing this a long time and try to do what's right by our clients and approach the work that we do the right way. So I want to make sure I throw that out there. But I've definitely been seeing the trend that you're talking about over the last few years of a lot of single income families, a lot of dual income households, no kids, because God forbid something does happen in a relationship, they want to be able to part ways and separate assets and keep things clean and not have to worry about the emotional toll that divorce is going to take on children. And I get it. I think one of the biggest things, and I've been trying to do a better job of this in educating people and in other podcasts that I'm doing, and even in the marketing and that we do, because we try to be educators about all this stuff. I think one of the things that we really need to stop doing is creating a stigma around a prenuptial agreement. And there's such a negative connotation to it. But if you think about it, a marriage is a business transaction. You go down to the county courthouse, your spouse gives them their information, you give them your information, they approve you get a marriage license, a legal document that says you are eligible to get married. You go through this $1 million event like you're talking about, which I think is crazy. Lo and behold, you're married, and it's a formalized legal agreement, right? It's effectively a business transaction. The CEO of the Lou household was now going to be the CEO, join forces with the CEO of another household, and they're going to become one, right? Layering in a prenuptial agreement there seems a little bit icky, and it gets kind of weird, and people are like, "Oh, there's like, do we really want to go into this thinking that we're going to break up and everything?" It's like, what? Like, you have to have an out clause. Every business transaction in the world has termination agreements embedded in it, right? Why would a marriage be any different? So I think we need to remove the stigma, and I think it would be super helpful if more people considered it, because in these situations, I'll give an example, right? I grew up in New England, even though I live in California now. I grew up in New England, and I'm sorry to say this to a lot of your listeners, but I am a huge Tom Brady fan. I've been a New England Patriots fan since I was 4 or 5 years old. So as far as I'm concerned, Tom Brady walks on water. If anybody paid attention to the divorce between him and Giselle, it was the fastest, the cleanest, probably the least expensive celebrity divorce that has been known to man, because they went through the prenup exercise. They knew if this wasn't going to go south, she was going to get this and he was going to get that, and this is what the parenting plan was going to look like, and these are the assets they were going to keep, and so on and so forth. And it was super clean. Probably involved many attorneys, which a lot of us don't have to worry about as laymen and as normal people. But I think a lot more people going into a marriage with that document in hand and really thinking it through could save themselves a ton of headaches.
Yeah, I love that. And same thing with where he wanted to give Mackenzie, he didn't want to screw her over. It looks like Bill Gates as well. It sparked so many interesting questions because, like I said, there's this whole, like you talked about prenups. So, and then I've also seen, like, for example, a lot of A-list celebrities and musicians, they don't get married because it's just, I don't want to say guaranteed, but it's almost like they're gonna part ways. So, which kind of brings me to my next question is with divorce solutions, kind of talk about this is it better to, so this prenup agreement, you've got insurance, but with your extensive background in managing assets for families and businesses at Morgan Stanley and Fidelity, what are some key strategies you help employ people to preserve their wealth in the case of, divorce? I've also recently there's this idea of like a conscious divorce, like just basically this amicable splitting is just like very intentional, kind of just, it's almost like having a will or just, and that way it's just very formalized. It's not this emotional bitter battle. So talk about that.
Yeah, and we can start there. The perfect example I have there is I am remarried after my divorce in 2017. I did find an amazing woman, and we've since been remarried. Their situation was exactly that. It was more of a decoupling. Like, this isn't working for you. This isn't working for me. How do we make sure we do this in the most amicable way? How do we make sure the kids are taken care of? And it was, $1,000 divorce, because that's the cost that they literally sat together I'm in San Diego. I'm just outside of San Diego. So I went with them to help them file the documents. I was a witness to the documents, and it made things so much easier. The kids are amazing. We have a great relationship. All of us get along. It's just one of those things where it's not always that way. Right. But it can happen. And a lot of that is based on communication and really just trying to make sure that you're fair. It's all fair, right? Like, who wants to keep what, and well, let's talk it through. And this is what I want, and this is what you want. So how do we make it work for everybody? And that's how it can be. Unfortunately, we know that that's like 10% or maybe 20% of divorces that are out there. A good majority of them involve attorneys and duking out in courts and involving professionals to help separate assets, which can be a little bit of a challenge. But I would encourage anybody that's out there, if they can figure out a way to make it amicable, certainly it will help keep more money in your pocket versus the attorneys. And even folks like me, I tell people all the time, like, I'm not here to take anybody's money. I'm here to just help you through this process, and get fairly compensated for it. But if you can do it on your own, more power to you. I'm now forgetting the first part of the question. I started with the end.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned prenup, and then so it sounds like just having open conversations with your spouse or partner. In the event that things go south, we have a plan. We have a plan, like a plan of action. So in this case, with Allegiant Divorce Solutions, how do you assist individuals in navigating the complexity of divorce, both pre and post? And my other question is, like, clients, are you seeing more clients like as they get divorced, or more is it just kind of divorce planning, kind of like, we want to talk to you just in case we get divorced, like they're still married but they just want to seek additional advice?
I now remember the question. I'm getting old, man, so like I got to make sure I repeat these questions back. But the first part of the question was the asset. I think it comes down to asset division and being really fair and pragmatic about it. The question was around preserving wealth, right? So as far as preserving wealth goes, I think one of the main things, the main trends that I'm seeing right now is people don't really understand the impact that taxes will have on some of the decisions that they have to make, right? So we could talk all day about different asset division strategies and how we work with clients in that respect and so on. But I think this is one that your listeners would really want to hone in on if they're considering getting a divorce. And why I say that is because, let's say, for example, we have a husband and wife that have, or a spouse and spouse, and we do deal with a lot of same-sex marriages as well. You have a spouse and spouse that has $500,000 in equity in their home, and one of them has $500,000 in a 401k. Let's just for easy math, right? In the amicable situation, a lot of people would look at that and go, okay, well, you know what, you keep the house and you keep the kids, and I'm going to keep the 401k and move on with my life. And then in maybe even some of the not so amicable situations, people look at that and go, well, it's an equal split. Let's just move on. And a lot of attorneys miss this too. They don't recognize the impact that taxes have. Well, because if that person that owns the home decides to sell it sometime into the future, they're going to get some favorable tax treatment on that. Whereas the person that has the 401k, even though the numbers on the spreadsheet that they create might look equal, you have to factor taxes into the 401k, because when you take money out of that 401k, you pay taxes with every distribution. So $500,000 in a 401k might really only be worth 350, whereas the house is definitely worth 500, and it's probably going to appreciate and continue to grow over time. So we have to, the one thing people miss all the time is the tax component of it. So we have to walk people through that. And that's part of the asset division that we do is we specialize in focusing on the after-tax values of different types of investments and different types of assets. Because if you want to get a fair and equitable split, you have to know the impact that taxes have. And I think that goes a long way in, circling back to your question, how do people maximize and manage their wealth through this process? It's by focusing on those little nuances like that are going to impact them over a 5, 10, 20-year time frame, right? It's not just the decision that they're making today and how that impacts them in this moment. It's how does it impact them for the future as well? Is that helpful?
Yeah, it really, because you have to look at it from all different angles. You have to look at it from, especially taxes, that's going to be your big, the government wants its chunk of change. And then you also, if you have to liquidate those assets, that's going to have tax implications. The other question I have is, kind of ending, and I really enjoyed this conversation because it's very enlightening. It just kind of sheds light on something that people are so afraid to talk about. And do you work with just opposite couples or just same sex, or how can people, because, it's different from each state and, you're based in California, but if clients are interested in talking to you, what's the best way to get advice or find more information?
I would say send them, everybody can visit the website. The website's easy to find. It's Allegiant Divorce Solutions or allegiantds.com. And I'm sure the links will be all put up by Christopher when he posts this show, so you can access them there. But the one thing I want to make sure we drive home in this conversation is relative to what you just mentioned is we can work with people in all 50 states. We have clients in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Florida, Texas, a couple in South Dakota. We're all over the map at this stage of the game because we do work in a virtual environment. And a lot of people are like, well, you don't understand the laws of my state. As far as I know, 2 + 2 still equals 4 in Florida, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Virginia, right? And because we handle the financial aspect of things. And as long as we get an understanding, as long as we understand the rules relative to asset division, community property versus quasi-community property versus separate property rules that are out there, we can work with anybody. It's your attorney and you who need to understand the legal aspects of things and legal process and so on. And the beauty of the work that we do and the technology that we use is that all the reports and all of the analysis that we run for all of our clients is admissible in courts in all 50 states because the software is smart enough to know which state you're in and what reports and in the format that those reports need to be in to present to the courts. So I don't need to be an expert in New Mexico law to be able to help somebody in New Mexico, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And so how can people find out more about you, check out the work that you do, reach out to you if you have any, and just people can get more information?
Yeah, I would, again, send them to the website, right? Allegiantds.com. There's a lot of information on the website. There's actually a free resources page. So if there's anybody out there that's considering going through a divorce or trying to navigate it on their own, they can go to the free resources page of the website. We don't take an email address. There's no phone, first name, last name, email, phone number. We're not going to pepper you with a bunch of spam. It is literally free information. So you can go there and download all the documents you need. There's 10 to 12 different worksheets on there that I think are super helpful as people are going through this exercise. We did also create in the last couple of months, we've created what's called a Facebook group for it's called Preparing Financially for Divorce. So if you're on Facebook, I know some of the younger crowd out there is like, Facebook, forget it. But there's a great opportunity to join us in that group there. It's all confidential. It's a private group. So your spouse is never going to see that you're in this group. It's a great place to ask questions and get the help you need. It's all free. We don't take any information there. And I'm trying to do my best to, 3 or 4 times a day, try to share some, tips and tricks along the way that I think might be helpful. And again, it's all a free resource. So it's a great place for us to all get together and support one another. So again, that's called Preparing Financially for Divorce on Facebook. So people can find us there as well. And again, the website has all my contact info. So if people want to schedule a time to talk or email me or have questions, My cell phone number is on the website, so they can call me or text me. I'm not that, we don't do 800 numbers here. They can,
Yeah.
anybody that needs help, we certainly want to make sure we get them in the right place.
And for all the audience out there, let's thank Jamie for coming on. And again, it's something that we're afraid to talk about, but we have to talk about. It's like death, taxes, divorce, kind of those three topics. And the better you plan, the better off you be, more smoother, more money you'll save, more hassle. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.